So, hello and welcome back to the Journey Beyond Yourself Summit. Today we have Stel Fine with us. Good morning, Stel, or good afternoon
Good,
where you are.
good morning. It's good. It's evening my time.
It's evening your time. I'm going to introduce you, Stel, and then we'll get into chat. Is that okay?
Yes, great.
So, Stel Fine is a certified inner bonding facilitator with a master's degree in spiritual psychology. Stel's life purpose is to help people learn how to stop causing themselves needless suffering and restriction, to free them up to become loving, whole, and fulfilled. She is an awesome trainer, speaker, and psychotherapist, and she is the director of training and expansion at Inner Bonding Education Technologies. So, welcome, Stella, and your two cats who I've met, who are with us, that's very nice to have them on board too. Um, where shall we start before we look at inner bonding? Tell me what brought you here. How did you get involved with inner bonding and where you are now?
Thank you. That's a great question. How I got involved was I had some trauma in my background, including an almost fatal slip and fall off of a cliff when I was 20.
Wow.
Yes, and so I was terrified after that of making a mistake, of not not planning things out. And I was starting to get rather anxious. And someone I know recommended an inner bonding facilitator who works with trauma. And I discovered this amazing modality. And this was after I had received my master's degree in spiritual psychology, which covered many different techniques, all of which I enjoyed very much. But it wasn't until I started learning inner bonding that I had a way of parsing out what was coming from my true self and what was coming from this false self.
Mm.
Because until learning that there were two different things, I mean, people know it probably as a social mask or a facade or whatever. I mean, we are being ourselves in each situation as much as possible, but we we unconsciously start to cater to whatever audience we are talking to, if it's a party versus if it's at home with family versus etc. So what I learned with inner bonding that I never knew before is that the doubts and the fears and the limiting beliefs that I had, that I thought were just me, were actually being projected into my consciousness from a specific part of myself that inner bonding calls your wounded ego self. So that is the part who thinks its job is to protect us, to control us and others, and to avoid anything that is painful. Whereas our true self knows that life has pain in it, and so we're going to feel grief and we're going to feel sadness and all that other stuff. But my wounded ego self was beating me up for that mistake I made when I was probably looking at a butterfly or something, and I slipped at the edge of a cliff, and it was actually a waterfall right there. It was a little waterfall, but that's where I slipped. So my wounded ego self just wanted to beat me up for that and be hyper vigilant about doing everything perfectly so no mistake would ever happen again. And I loved inner bonding so much that I decided I wanted to become a certified facilitator, which I did. And then I got involved in helping the woman who created the training program run that for the first year. And since then, I've been the director of training and expansion at Inner Bonding.
Yeah, awesome. Which is an expansion, right? How many countries
Yes.
are you in now? Give us how many people do you think you've reached with inner bonding?
Oh my gosh, I actually don't have that statistic, but so many. I didn't think to ask. So Margaret Paul and Erica Chopich are the co-creators and owners of Inner Bonding, and they would have that information, and I haven't asked. But I can tell you this, that in the training programs that I have either co-led or led, we have people from all over the world. Right now, in our current training program, we have someone from Dubai, someone from Egypt, a few people from London. We have someone from Spain, someone from Switzerland, people from the US, someone from Canada, 2 people from Argentina. And the year before, we had someone from Austria and other people from London and Croatia. We're all over the place.
Well, it is. This is why I know it's worldwide, and I'm guessing you're in the thousands, because it's been going a long while, right? So,
Yes.
so what? Where should we start? Should we start with your story? How did you experience your coming together, your colliding of your wounded self and your true self? How was, was there one moment that you went, oh, I'm integrated, or is it a slow journey and suddenly you just realize that the fears and the anxieties drop off? What's the kind of process?
That's a great question. So, in most inner child work, the idea is to, bring everyone together and integrate everyone as a happy family. In inner bonding, it's actually slightly different. So, in inner bonding, our inner child is our true self, and the loving adult is essentially the inner parent whose job is to take care of the inner child.
Yeah.
So getting enough sleep, eating right, but also having boundaries and standing up for him or her, and doing work in an orderly way that isn't too overwhelming, and all that kind of stuff. In inner bonding, the wounded ego self, it's not the same as a wounded inner child, who we're kind of trying to heal and morph back into one whole.
Mm-hmm.
We are actually, Margaret and Erica's thinking on the wounded ego self is that it's the amygdala. It's coming from its old beliefs that are habituated, and it's a pattern. And our job essentially as a loving adult is to recognize these beliefs and to find out from the fourth aspect of our consciousness. And there are only 4 I'm going to be talking about. So there's the inner child, who I might also call your true self, or your original self, or your core self. And then there's the loving adult. That's the conscious you and I, the part that can take the actions in the world, that can show up for this interview, that can decide what our intention is. This is the part that becomes aware. Mm-hmm. And the fourth part is what we call guidance. So that is whatever your source of knowing is, whether that's your intuition, or your gut instinct, or God, or an angel, or whatever. And it's these 3: guidance, loving adult, and inner child, who are the ones who are the I call them the love team. I know that's kind of corny, but that's what's happening with these 3. Very often the loving adult will, I will anyway, not everyone's loving adult does this, but I will literally put my hands on my inner child's heart, and then I'll invite my guidance in. So it's the 3 of us. And I and everyone else, at least from inner bonding's perspective, can only be a loving adult when we are connected to our source of knowing and wisdom, which has also got gifts of patience and compassion and unconditional love and understanding and humility, etc. So I'm separating these 3 from the wounded self, which is a very deeply conditioned set of messages that helped us survive our childhood, or something that happened later. Even if we had wonderful parents, there's going to be something along the line that is shattering, that has us doubt our worth, our lovability, our capabilities, etc. So the wounded self comes in at that moment and makes a decision about who we are, or who someone else is, or how life is. So one of these decisions might be, I'm not good enough. And that's something that actually most people carry their whole lives long, because there's always someone who's better at something than you are. Um, and and so these beliefs, or I don't matter, let's say you grew up in a family where either your parents just didn't pay a whole lot of attention, or maybe there was another sibling who got all the accolades and the attention. And so the other child could come away with thinking, oh, I don't matter, or my needs don't matter. Um, Especially like if it's the oldest child and their parents tell them, you have to take care of the younger kids.
Yeah.
And by the way, you're going to get in trouble if they do something wrong.
Yeah.
I mean, what do you do with that? Like, that's a no-win situation. But the wounded self will go, okay, I'm on it. And they will develop all these strategies and beliefs to have us behave in a way that we think is going to save us.
Yeah.
But really, all of those strategies, whatever they are, people pleasing, overachieving, shutting down your feelings. I mean, there's being the joke, the funny, the class clown, whatever. All of those things might work in the moment then, but they become a bankrupt system later
Yeah.
for a
And
number of reasons.
I was just going to say, on the kind of the theme of this summit, they're going to limit you. They're the ceiling of the limits that you're able to get to. So
Absolutely.
there's your ceiling. So if you want to expand beyond there, you're looking at the wounded self, and then I'll pass it back over to you, because I'm sure you were going to describe that, but you're going to be working with them. But they're your limits. That's what limits you.
Exactly. Exactly. And it thinks it's protecting us by limiting us in those ways.
Yeah.
It has doubled down on that bet
Yeah.
over and over again. But the way that we
I'll just dip in there, because another one that comes up a lot with people, I think, is an easy way of looking at this is, if you had your heart broken, and your wounded self may make a decision, well, let's not fully love again, because that
right,
really hurt. So
yeah,
that's an easy one to see. It's trying to protect you, but it's going to limit your amount to be loved and receive love and give love.
absolutely, absolutely. That's a great one. And another great one is I can't trust myself anymore, which means I'm going to now play small and I'm not going to take
Yeah.
risks.
Yeah.
And your life gets extremely restricted and limited if you make that decision. Or I can't trust men, or I can't trust women, or I can't trust people on the freeway to drive well, or what have you. So each of these limitations is because this part of ourself doesn't have any access to the truth.
Mm, mm.
It cannot help us.
Yeah.
So it just says, shut down, stay below the radar, don't take any risks, think very carefully before you speak, always be on the lookout for danger. And what it doesn't see that we are able to teach it through inner bonding is that limits my life to such a degree that I'm suffering.
Yeah.
Like, please let me show you. I'm as if the wounded self is right here. Let me show you how I'm suffering as a result of if I believe it, and I'm not taking risks, and I'm not putting myself out there. There's a low grade fear, misery. My vitality and my life force is just shut right down. And so you can show the wounded self the effect that it has on us,
Mm-hmm.
but it can't change.
Mm.
But in showing the wounded self that, in a way, we're really just educating our loving adult. Don't trust anything the wounded self says. It's got no access to the truth. And if we do what it says, we will be hurt. It's like the Pema Chodron quote where she says something like, the young warrior asked fear, how do I defeat you? And fear says, if you don't do anything I say, you will defeat me.
Mm-hmm.
And the wounded self is all about fear. That's
Mm-hmm.
where it's coming from.
Yeah.
But thank goodness in inner bonding anyway, and in other techniques in their own ways, we can access our own reliable wisdom and truth, and we can just ask, is this true? Like, let's say someone's saying to themselves, oh, don't go on a dating app because remember what happened to you when you were young, it didn't work out, protect yourself, why even bother, all that stuff. You can ask guidance, is it true
Yeah.
that I still need to protect myself? Is that even true from what happened in, seventh grade or college or whatever? And then we listen. And whenever we ask guidance that question, and there are really only two questions we ask guidance, and that's, what's the truth? Usually, what's the truth about this statement,
Yeah.
this limit that I think is a limiting belief, but I'm checking with you just to be sure.
Yeah.
And the second question we ask guidance is, what is the most loving action I can take for myself?
Mm.
Not what's the best action, not what's the smartest action, not what's going to be the most successful action, because those are all, um, they're all a means to an end, which might be a very fine end, but it's not necessarily what our true self needs and wants.
Mhm. Mhm.
That's why when it's what's most loving to me, that's when we get a pure, custom answer for whatever is going to work for and I'm going to call it our soul. I mean, not everyone believes that our original self, the personality we came in with, is our soul, but I kind of feel like it is. So that's my bias, and I'm just going to put it out there.
Well,
Um,
that serves the purpose. We need a word for it, and there's many, and that, interchange soul with whatever you think.
yeah. And so, can I give you an example of how the whole process works? Because I kind of jumped to the what guidance says, which is a little later in the process.
And Stel, I'm putting you
Yeah,
on the spot here, but if you want to take us into a little practical experience,
sure.
I'm always up for that.
Do you want me to run you through a little process?
Yeah. Is that okay?
Awesome. Yeah, I would love that. I think
Right.
that's wonderful.
Awesome.
Okay, so let's just do a little facilitation right here and right now.
Great. And for everyone listening, this is as relevant to you whenever you're listening. This is a process. So jump in.
Okay, great. So I often like to start doing the process with like a centering prayer, just to get us both in the moment and in the present. So I'm going to just close my eyes and simply say, let's just take a breath or two at your pace, allowing this breath to bring us into the present moment, aware that we are sitting in our chairs, in our rooms. For you, it's in the morning, and for me, it's in the evening. For me, I have cats here. For you, there are guinea pigs somewhere nearby, and children. And we're just including everything right now. And coming into awareness of ourselves, following the breath through our nostrils, and breathing it into our lungs and exhaling. And so I'm going to open my eyes now. The first step of inner bonding is to feel your feelings. So, generally, if you're being facilitated, we might start with sensations. So, as you breathe, just do a little body scan and notice how are you feeling, like just a scan from the top of your head down through your face and your neck and your jaw, your shoulders, your throat, your chest and your back. We're just noticing if there are places of tension, or if there's constriction, or if there's butterflies, or any sensation at all that's pronounced, that's getting your attention. And you can continue to Just scan your heart, your solar plexus, stomach, abdomen, our seat, our legs, knees, calves, feet, toes, and then back up to the arms and elbows and forearms and hands and fingers. And just breathing into this amazing human body that we're in. Just tune into the aliveness that's there, so that we are locating our awareness in our body, focusing on the sensations. So if there's a headache or a neck ache, or something's going on with your stomach, just notice that. And then if you feel comfortable telling me what you're picking up, we can explore with it.
I have noticed that I'm generally very content and calm. My body's quite tired this morning, but my jaw is a bit tense. And you asked for it, Stel. My butt is a bit sore for being seated for a bit too long this morning.
Yes.
I wish I wasn't on a chair. I usually sit with my legs crossed, and I'm just at a weird angle. So that's where the sensation is.
Okay, great. So even though it makes sense that, this could just be about comfort or sitting in a different chair than usual or sitting in a different way than usual, we're going to talk to this sensation as if it's a communication from your inner child, your core self, your body. Just find out if there's anything else going on there. It might be as simple as, yeah, I want to sit the way I normally sit, or it could be something different. And which is a stronger sensation? Is it your jaw or your butt?
Well, let's go jaw, because I think the butt is the chair, but the jaw is
The jaw is tension. Okay. So feel free to move it if it wants to move. Just as a way of saying hi, I'm with you. I see that you're tight or you're feeling tension, and I care about that. Or you could even put your hands on your jaw if you felt like it, kind of giving it a hug.
Oh, I like that.
Oh, you're hurting. Oh, I care about that. And the I I'm speaking of is the loving adult. Like your loving adult is taking the time to notice that your jaw is tense. And since the whole purpose of inner bonding is to learn how to be loving to yourself, it's fine to bring it some physical relief by touching it. Yeah, giving it a little massage is great. It's like, hey, I see you. I care about you. You've got my attention. And it would be the same if it was a big feeling like sadness or fear or whatever, because we see the inner child as an inner bonding. It's as if you had your own child coming in saying, Mom, my jaw really hurts. Well, you might just scoop your child up and hold him or her and be like, oh, honey. And just the love and attention that you bring to this is already a little bit healing, because bringing loving to the parts that hurt is often healing.
Mm.
Like when you as a mom kiss a bruise or a scrape or whatever, and it's like, oh, it feels better.
Mm.
And there's no physical reason why that should be,
Mm.
but it's an act of love.
Mm.
So, but now we can also talk to your jaw and ask it. Well, actually, normally we set the intention first, so let's do that. Are you willing to take responsibility for either helping your jaw or having caused whatever tension is there? Are you willing to take responsibility for that?
Yes.
Great. And just take a moment to connect with whatever your source of guidance is, whether that's your intuition or a higher being or the universe. Just bring it in to source you. And just let me know when you feel like, you've reached out and it's heard you. And okay, great.
Yeah, I'm here. I'm just happy here until you tell
I
me.
know. Isn't it true? I'll just stay here. And that's healing too, because our source of guidance, I believe, cares about us. And we are receiving that caring as soon as we invite it to be with us. So now I would like you, the conscious you, the loving adult, to ask your jaw, what am I telling you or believing or doing or not doing that's causing you to feel so tight, or whatever word you would use for that? And if you get an answer for the sake of this demonstration, I'm going to ask you to say it out loud if you're willing.
Well, there's two things still. So the first thing that comes is, I'm holding on.
Okay.
But I don't, that's this physical sensation is that I'm holding on. There's another thing that comes through, which is more nurturing, which is that I'm not taking the time just now to relax where I need to relax.
Okay. Great. So would it feel loving to you to take a moment right now to just consciously allow yourself to relax? Because we're doing this interview together, and I am happy to guide you through this, so you can just relax right now. And bring breath there, breathing right into a part of us that's has been holding on, can also give it support to relax. And if it doesn't want to let go, that's okay. We have some questions we can ask it. So let me know if it is letting go, or if you would feel comfortable with me asking you some of the step 3 inner bonding questions.
Well, Stel, I'm very happy. It's nice to just bring attention there, and when I'm inviting it to relax, it relaxes. So it feels beautiful.
Good.
The purpose of the demonstration, I guess, let's go there.
Well, but if that's relaxed,
Yeah.
and it's not there anymore, we can go with something else.
Yeah. It feels good. And there was a little moment when there was a thing in my ear which I wasn't aware of that kind of popped in. It was almost like the jaw relaxed enough that it hadn't for a while. It shifted down again. So that was lovely. Bringing attention and just remembering, relax.
Yeah. Yeah. And we don't, what we lead busy lives, especially as a mom. And there's so many other beings to take care of and watch out for and everything else. It can be easy to not be as in tune with what our own body and our own inner child might need. So makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
And so having a practice like this to, sit and be and attune to ourselves is an act of love and caring.
Yeah.
So just take a moment and see if there's anything else there. Now that that's released, what else? Is there anything that feels maybe more emotional? Or maybe there's some feeling about having it be so simple to release that tension. Anything at all. Take a moment and tune in.
Well, what's coming up right now is that a feeling of I'm not being a very good demonstration.
Oh, don't worry about it. I mean, I can fill in with examples later. You're doing great.
I feel so content. You've just brought me to a nice, content, open, relaxed space.
Beautiful.
There isn't anything really noteworthy going on. So the only thing that then comes in is I should be finding something.
Okay, well, just notice how your body feels when you believe that. I should be fine. It's not okay to be content, not for this demonstration. Just see what happens when you believe that.
Yeah. No, there's definitely a bit more contraction when that happens. So it was just so nice to be content. I think I want to stay there still.
That's great. Please do. And for the sake of demonstration, most of the same questions. I'm going to ask most of the same questions because thank goodness when people go to practice inner bonding, either with themselves or with a facilitator, many times we're going to be feeling happy or content or good. And what's great about this is then it's a moment of bonding between the loving adult and the inner child, because if our intention is to learn how to be loving to ourselves and others without giving ourselves up, then learning what we're doing or not doing or believing that's allowing our true self to feel good and content is just as valuable.
I agree. Yeah.
As
And taking the time to notice. So that's taking the time to notice, because, and I love the beginning, give it some love like you would a child. I just think that message is so important, because we often treat ourselves like we wouldn't treat our worst enemy, whether that's mentally or physically, ignoring aches and pains. So I just love that reminder to treat yourself like you would your child or your best friend or somebody you love. Why don't we do that for ourselves more often? And I think just even when there's not something you want to you've gone for, some emotional issue that you've gone for, just taking the time to remember to notice yourself and observe yourself and then integrate yourself and love yourself is really powerful.
Very powerful. Very powerful, because essentially the message that we're giving our inner child when you do exactly what you just did, which was become present and notice, the message they get is, I matter.
Yeah.
She sees me.
Yeah.
She's caring about me. She's connecting with me. She's not looking for me to get a thing done or achieve something or prove myself. She's just happy being with me and wants me to feel good.
Yeah. And that's okay. It's okay.
It's great. I mean, that's what every child wants, whether you're an external age of a child or you're 90 years old and you're having whatever aches and pains you have then.
Yeah. I wanted to ask you, Stel, when so we have the wounded self, We have the true self, or the inner child, the loving adult, which is us going around in our day, the higher self, or guidance, or God. How do you facilitate people accessing their higher self?
That is a great question. So, a lot of people already have a connection with their higher self, whether they call it intuition or they call it God. Some people have a connection with Mother Mary or an angel. Um, but for people who don't, either because, and this is the saddest, either because we were brought up in a religion where we had a natural belief in God, but either the religion was too controlling or restrictive, or actually condemning, which is the opposite of what God,
Loving.
him, her, itself is supposed to be like, and that shut a person down. Or whether they just, they grew up agnostic, or whatever, or maybe they grew up in a family where science and math were encouraged, and logic, but not intuition or sensitivity or whatever. So there's a guided meditation that Margaret has done, and I'd be happy to run you through that, even though you probably have your own sense of guidance, just for the heck of it, if you like. So I can either describe it, or I can run you through it.
I'm just thinking about time. What do you
Okay, I'll describe it.
Okay.
So I invite people to, again, come into their body.
Run us through it, Stel. Run us through it.
Okay. All right. Great. So we've already done a little bit with you becoming acquainted with what your body's feeling now, tuning in. And so we would do that. And then I'm going to ask you to close your eyes and just take a moment to explore the room you're in right now with your senses. So with your eyes closed, can you feel the temperature in the room? Just notice the temperature. And then just notice anything you smell, or any sounds that may be going on. My voice is one, but there may be others. And I'm not going to have you explore your room with your eyesight right now, just because we're doing an abbreviated version. But right there in your chair, I'd like you to give yourself permission to, in your imagination, visit a place in nature that just is really inviting to you. And just let yourself look around in that imaginary place and notice the colors, the objects, and what the textures are, even just from looking at them. And notice the temperature in that place. And if there's wind, or if there's sunshine on you that's nice and warm, and what you smell. And hear what sounds are in that place. And if you're sitting, just notice what it feels like to sit wherever you're sitting in your imagination, or if you're standing, or if you're in the water, just notice how it feels. And if there's anything you happen to taste in that imaginary place. And so I'd like you to notice that in this imaginary place, a little ways away, not right next to you or anything, a being has entered this same environment. And you can just tell, even though it's kind of far away, you can just tell this is a being that is kind and good. Their energy is benevolent, caring, compassionate, and it's making its way to you slowly so that you have plenty of time to check out its energy and see how your sense of it is. And it may appear to you in any number of different visual components. But as it gets close to you, feel free, and you don't have to do this out loud, but feel free to greet it somehow in your imagination. And see if you can sense its goodness. And maybe it answers you, or maybe it wraps its arm around you in a hug, or maybe it sits with you. Just commune with this being, this wise, knowing source of peace and goodness. And if it appeals to you, you can ask it, are you here to help me? Can you help me? Or who am I to you? Anything you like. And you could ask it, are you able to tell me what's true? Is that something you actually know? Could you reliably tell me the truth about things if I have questions? And could you help me to learn how to be loving to myself? Is that something you know? You know how I could behave and actions I could take for myself that would be loving? Is that within your domain? And if it answers in the affirmative, you can ask it any question you like and let it answer. And you could also ask it, how do you see me? Me meaning you. What qualities do you see in me? How do I how do I appear to you or occur to you? And I'm going to ask you to imagine that your own inner child, your own original self, the baby that you were, the personality you were when you were born into this world, is right there with you. And your guidance, I'm going to call it your guidance, whatever's appearing to you. And I'm going to ask you, the loving adult in your imagination, to share with your inner child the qualities that she has that guidance just told you are your qualities, your gifts, if I may be so bold as to call them that. And can you, the adult, see that this is true about you? These qualities that you're telling your inner child, you just learned about, both of you, from guidance. Would it feel true to say to her, I know we are these things? Like, this is true about us. And if that does feel authentic for you to share, just notice how she responds, she, your inner child, that you know now who she is. What unique qualities she has that you've always had. You've always been these things. This is intrinsically who you are. And these are treasures. These are precious. This is the truth. And knowing who she/you really are is a source of great healing and rejuvenation. Because our wounded selves are going to want us to be everything to everyone, and they're going to point out the things we're not. But those, who cares? This is what the truth is. And so, would you tell your inner child that, if this is true for you, would you tell her that we're going to visit guidance again? This is not the last time we're going to talk with guidance. But you and I are going to come back into the present moment, and we're going to stay connected with guidance, even though guidance may be invisible most of the time, unless we consciously sit and do a meditation to recreate this exact place in our imagination and see guidance there. But we don't have to do that, because guidance is available whenever we want to connect and whenever we want to ask it a question. I believe it is its great pleasure to be connected with us and to help us, to tell us what the truth is and what the loving action is for your precious, true, sparkly self. And then in your own time, come back with your inner child into this room. Knowing you can always reconnect with guidance, always. And when you're ready, open your eyes. And did you get to meet your guidance?
Yes, that was beautiful. Yeah, that was powerful. Thank you, Stel.
You're welcome. That guided meditation is in Margaret Paul's Self Quest program. It's a software program. It's available online, and it's a great program because it has that meditation. It has lots of videos. It has questions. You get to fill in your history and issues and all kinds of stuff. And the program itself can help facilitate you actually through the inner bonding process.
Well, that was incredible. I love that process. And I also feel like that will be incredibly powerful for many people who haven't found their higher self, source, help, guidance, whatever they want to call it. And for people who have, but want to go and say hi.
Yeah.
Bring it back in the room with you. I quite like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. So that was beautiful. Thank you so much.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Truly.
So I'm going to end with asking you one question that I'm asking everybody, and you may have just given it to us, and it's okay if you have, but I'm going to ask you. So the question is, if you had to choose one or, a few, but if you had to hone in on what people could do now, take action on now, that would help them to step towards that most loving version of themselves, or to integrate those 3 parts, what would it be? What would be something that people could do right now? Or where would you point them to start?
There's so many different ways of answering that question. I think the one main thing would be to commit to finding their way into loving themselves. Because it may be inner bonding, it may be Tai Chi, it may be guided meditations, it may be a 12-step program, it may be tapping. I mean, the most important thing is to make the commitment that I am not going to give up on myself. I am not going to surrender to a life of suffering unnecessarily. Well, they wouldn't even know it's unnecessarily. So I'm not down with suffering for the sake of suffering. I'm going to find a way to learn how to be kind, compassionate, and for me, most importantly, attuned to who I really am, and to live my life from that place. Because once you make that choice, you might start saying no where you had said yes before. You might start eating differently. You might start being vulnerable with your partner or your friends in ways that had scared you before. You might start watching Brene Brown videos. I mean, the list is endless. Once you've made the choice, I'm going to learn to love myself even with my flaws, because they don't disappear. I have tons of character defects. I mean, I have great qualities, and I have areas where I'm just not, as put together as I'd like to be. But it doesn't matter, because for inner bonding, my inner child knows I see her.
Yeah.
I celebrate her gifts.
Yeah.
And I accept her exactly as she is. So find your way to unconditionally loving yourself.
Yeah.
And inner bonding has been that for me and many others. And I swear by it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really powerful. Thank you. And I'm thinking of coming back to, in the process of when we talked about love yourself as you would your child. So our children aren't perfect. They don't delight our soul 24 hours a day. Sometimes they're rat bags. We still throw ourselves under a bus for them. We love them,
Yeah.
So
yeah.
give that to yourself. So I love that, because also what calls to me is that There are so many modalities, methods, practicalities, tools, as you said. This summit, there's 25, you know, out there, there's a gazillion. But what nobody else can do for you is make the commitment to doing something. So I
Yes.
think it's so powerful what you've said, making the commitment to just spending time attuning, figuring out whatever words you want to use for who I truly am, making a commitment to live by that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Finding your way by noticing, becoming aware of, what do I resonate with? What repels me? What, like, does this feel good? We didn't go through all the steps, and that's fine, because the giveaway is Margaret's, Dr. Paul's free 7-day course, which can explain all of this. But the sixth step is, after you take a loving action, or in this case, when we're talking about, even if you're discerning if something works for you or not, the final step in knowing if the process works is to evaluate how you feel.
Mm.
How do I feel as a result of listening to this tape or doing this thing or whatever? Because your feelings are a great litmus test.
Yeah. They're there for a reason. They're there to give you information.
Yes, they are.
Yeah. Yes. Wonderful. So powerful. Thank you so much, Stel, for your time. And
You're
thank you
welcome.
for sharing your wisdom and your experience and the inner bonding with us. Thank you so much.
It's been a pleasure.
Have a wonderful rest of your evening, and we will speak soon. You take
Okay.
care.
You too. Bye-bye.